Good evening. The Metropolitan Police boss has previously warned that eye-watering cuts were on the way, and today we learned to what extent. £450 million. That's what Sir Mark Rowley's revealed, and that amounts to cutting 2,300 officers. The changes could impact things like the flying squad, the dogs unit and frontline staff, which he says will have a seriously detrimental impact on tackling crime. Here's our political correspondent, Simon Harris.
When hooded thugs raided a Chelsea jewellers, the hammers weren't just to smash the display cases. They were used as weapons on the owner, Ian Towning. His security cameras captured his ordeal. The three robbers were eventually caught by the Met's flying squad, and Mr Towning is horrified that the Sweeney might now be the victim of cuts.
I think that's unbelievable that we can put squeeze on this force that protects us. You know, it's very important to have this squad there. They're amazing.
At City Hall today, the Met Commissioner detailed how many police jobs are at risk.
This is an actual reduction. This isn't about sort of clearing out vacancies or anything like that. This is an actual reduction in the headcount of those policing London by 2,300 officers.
Scotland Yard is predicting a shortfall of £450 million when the government announces how much money it's giving to police forces. In a report for City Hall, the Commissioner said the cuts would be a worst-case scenario to allow him to balance the Met's budget. He described them as tough choices which would have a seriously detrimental impact. The savings could mean a smaller flying squad no longer allowed to use guns, fewer dog handlers and officers on horseback, reduced opening hours at some police stations and fewer investigations into historic crimes.
This is going to have an impact on victims when you're talking about historical offences, whether it's murder investigations or whether it's sexual offences or child abuse. This takes a lot of time and they are protected investigations, but long term it's better for the victims to be able to have some form of justice served.
A spokesperson for the Mayor blamed the Met's financial crisis on 14 years of cutbacks by the last government. Sadiq Khan's Conservative opponents point the finger at him.
Since the London Mayor has stopped standing up for London and stopped challenging the government now that it's a Labour government, it falls really to the Met Commissioner to speak up for the police and the funding that they need, because they didn't get anything from Labour in the budget, and if they don't get anything in the spending review coming up in June, that'll be a serious problem, as we're seeing all of these potential cuts the Commissioner has outlined.
City Hall said the Mayor was having constructive talks with ministers and no final decision on cuts had been taken.
But Simon, it's not just the Met that's talking about funding.
No, police forces across the country are looking to see how much money they're going to get, and I think they all have a pretty good idea. Take Essex, where the Chief Constable thinks he's facing a shortfall of £34 million. He says his biggest cost is salaries, after police were given a pay rise of almost 5% last year, so he too is looking at cuts.
OK.
Put simply, it means less people. And the biggest cost of those people is officers, so it means less officers in Essex, and probably in the region of 200 less officers in Essex. Now, the others will work twice as hard. They'll keep on doing the amazing work. The staff will carry on doing the things they're doing, but we'll have less people doing less work. And, you know, there's the old adage of doing more with less. Well, the lemon's been pretty squeezed dry.
It's very clear that senior police officers are very publicly ringing the alarm bells now in the hope of putting pressure on the government to get more money. But as we know, government departments are under pressure to make savings. So the police forces should find out how much money they're going to get sometime next week.
OK, Simon, thanks very much.
A row has broken out after the government set a revised target for the number of new homes to be built in London each year. The Conservatives said the figure had been watered down from previous targets, but the Housing Minister said it was still more than double what is being built at the moment. Our political correspondent Simon Harris is in our Westminster studio.
The political agenda here has been dominated by the government's shake-up of the planning rules. It means some parts of the green belt around London will be reclassified as grey belt, meaning the land can be built on. And there's a fresh target for how many new homes Sadiq Khan must build in London. It was 100,000 a year.
The new method produces a figure for London of nearly 88,000. This is more than double recent delivery. It is the biggest proposed percentage increase against existing delivery of any region in the country by a significant margin. We expect London to step up. We expect London to step up and improve its housing delivery record.
If all areas must play their part in building the homes we need, why is the Minister reducing housing targets for London and other urban areas whilst increasing them in rural areas like mine?
In a constituency like mine, which is almost entirely green belt apart from that which is developed on, this will mean massive new development, an expansion of London sprawl and a change in the character of the area forever.
On tonight's The Late Debate, we'll be looking at Labour plans to tackle another of the pressures on housing in London, the impact of Right to Buy on the supply of council homes. Plus the warning that the Met will have to shed more than 2,000 police officers. And we'll ask, when will commuters feel the benefits of a nationalised railway? That's The Late Debate here on ITV1 after news at 10.
But first, the dream of home ownership could be snatched away from thousands of council tenants under a big shake-up by Labour. The government is worried people are buying properties much faster than new ones are being built. New rules could dampen demand of a scheme introduced by Margaret Thatcher in the 1980s. Our political correspondent Simon Harris has more.
Emily has been a council tenant for more than 30 years. She lives in a 3-bed terrace at Sunbury-on-Thames with 6 of her 8 children and wants to exercise her right to buy.
Oh, it's always been my dream to buy a house. I am going to college and university, so when I get a job, then my son works full-time, so between us we'll be able to afford it.
Don't you think this is lovely? And the trouble Mrs Patterson's taken with it.
It's almost 45 years since Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher had tea with the Pattersons at their house in Harold Hill in East London. It marked the start of the Conservatives' Right to Buy revolution.
Since the introduction of the Right to Buy scheme, we've sold off more than 2 million council properties, and at the expense of what? Now we currently have 1.4 million people waiting for a social home.
Now the Right to Buy discount enjoyed by the Pattersons and many of their neighbours has been cut. In London, it's been set at £16,000, down from £136,000. And tenants might have to wait up to 10 years before they're eligible, instead of 3.
We said that people should be able to buy their home if they've lived in it and raised their family in it for many years. But currently, we think people get that discount far too soon.
Critics of Right to Buy argue successive governments have failed to build enough new council homes to replace those sold off.
We are losing far more homes than we're building at the moment in terms of social rent. But we need at least 90,000 social rented homes every single year for the next 10 years. And the government has an opportunity at the spending review to invest in a new generation of social housing.
But the proposed changes haven't killed Emily's dream.
Eventually, we'd like to extend to make it bigger because we've got quite a large family, and then maybe one day move. I also think that this is an insurance, my pension fund really. So obviously eventually sell it and, get a smaller place, and that's my pension fund.
For more than 4 decades, council tenants have been given a helping hand to get on the property ladder. It's about to become a little harder. Simon Harris, ITV News.